30 years ago, a Mirati healer carried a dying human child through 2 miles of burning rubble. She did not know the child's name. She did not ask for payment. She simply saw a small creature suffering and decided that suffering should end. That child grew up to become Ambassador Dara Okonkwo. Now 62 years old, Dara sat in the Galactic Assembly Hall and watched as 200 species voted on the fate of Verdana 4. The Mirati homeworld. The place where gentle four-armed healers had built gardens instead of weapons and hospitals instead of fortresses. The Drenithi Imperium wanted that world. They wanted its minerals, its location, its resources. They had given the Mirati 60 days to leave or die. One by one, the votes came in. No intervention, no assistance, no help. The Mirati representative, a frail elder named Keeper Ashen, accepted the verdict with quiet dignity. His species had never learned to fight. They had never needed to. For 10,000 years, they had simply been kind, and kindness had been enough. Until now, Dara watched Keeper Ashen walk out of the chamber alone. No one offered comfort. No one offered hope. The Mirati were strategically worthless. They had no military, no valuable technology, no political power. They had only ever offered healing and food and shelter to those who needed it. Dara closed her eyes and remembered. She remembered being 12 years old on a refugee ship. She remembered the hunger that made her bones ache. She remembered human colonies burning and human fleets dying, and every species in the galaxy turning away because helping humans meant angering the wrong powers. She remembered a Mirati vessel appearing when all hope was gone. She remembered a healer named Grandmother Suli kneeling beside her and saying, "You are safe now, little one. We will feed you. We will heal you. You are safe." The Mirati had saved 40,000 human refugees that year. They had emptied their own food stores. They had given until they had nothing left to give. And when other species asked why they would waste resources on a dying race, Grandmother Suli had simply said, "Because they were hungry." Dara opened her eyes. She walked to the communication center and recorded a message. It was short. It was simple. She sent it to every human colony, every human ship, every human outpost in the galaxy. The Mirati helped us when we were nothing. They fed our children when we were dying. They ask for nothing now. But I am asking. I am begging. Remember what they did for us. Remember who we are. Remember. She did not know what would happen. Humans were not powerful. They were not rich. They had barely survived their own wars. But within 6 hours, the responses began. A retired soldier on Mars sent his life savings to fund transport ships. A cargo hauler captain changed course for Verdana 4. A wealthy businesswoman donated her private yacht to be converted into a gunship. Veterans who remembered Mirati medics treating their wounds volunteered to fight. Families who had survived because of Mirati food shipments offered their children as pilots. Communities that had been rebuilt with Mirati aid pooled their resources for weapons. No government ordered this. No military commanded it. Humans simply remembered, and remembering was enough. Fleet Admiral Ravi Anand received his orders 3 days later. Not from politicians, from the people themselves. Demanding action through every channel available, he looked at the tactical assessment. The Drenithi fleet outnumbered anything humanity could send by 10 to 1. Their technology was superior. Their soldiers were better trained. By every logical measure, this was a fight humanity could not win. He thought about his grandmother, who had died on that refugee ship 30 years ago. She had starved so the children could eat. And when a Mirati healer had finally reached her, she was already gone. But she had died knowing her grandchildren would live. Because of Mirati kindness, Admiral Anand approved the mission. His aide, a young officer named Lieutenant Patel, looked at the numbers with concern. "Sir, the Assembly has declared this a Drenithi internal matter. If we intervene, we will have no allies, no support. We will be alone against an empire." Anand stood and walked to the window of his office. Outside, ships were already being prepared. Old ships. Damaged ships. Ships that had no business flying into combat. "The Assembly says this is not our fight," he said quietly. "They do not understand. When someone saves your life, when someone feeds your children, when someone carries your wounded through fire and asks nothing in return, that creates something the Assembly cannot measure." He turned to face his aide. "It creates a debt, and humans never forget a debt. We never forget a favor. We never forget a kindness." His eyes hardened. "And we never forget when someone threatens those who showed us mercy. Lieutenant Patel swallowed. What do I tell the fleet, sir? Admiral Anand smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only memory. Only obligation. Only the cold certainty of a species that had learned to survive by remembering both friends and enemies. Tell them the Mirati are in danger. Tell them we remember what they did for us. Tell them we are going to repay that debt, and anyone who stands in our way will learn something important about humanity. What is that, sir? Anand looked out at the gathering fleet. That our gratitude and our revenge are equally absolute. The Drenithi wanted to take a world. They are about to discover what happens when humans remember. And we always remember. Across the galaxy, ships began to move. Not an army. Not yet. Just people. Just humans. Just a species that had learned one truth above all others. Kindness is never forgotten. And neither is cruelty. The Drenithi had no idea what was coming. Observer Prill had documented 17 wars across her long career. She had seen empires fall and species burn. She thought she understood conflict. She did not understand what she was seeing above Verdana 4. The Drenithi invasion fleet hung in perfect formation. 300 warships, gleaming with advanced technology and crewed by professional soldiers. Overlord Cassius commanded from his flagship, confident in his overwhelming advantage. Then the humans arrived. Prill counted the vessels as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Cargo haulers with guns welded to their hulls. Passenger liners with missile tubes bolted to their sides. Mining ships loaded with explosives. Personal yachts flown by elderly pilots. IT was not a fleet. It was a collection of desperation held together by determination. Overlord Cassius broadcast on all frequencies. Human vessels, you are interfering in Drenithi internal affairs. Leave now or be destroyed. This is your only warning. A response came from a converted mining ship. Captain Yuki Tanaka spoke clearly. The Mirati gave us bread when we were starving. They healed our sick when no one else would touch us. You want this planet? Come take it from us. Cassius laughed. His officers laughed with him. The tactical display showed the obvious truth. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and flying ships that should have been scrapped decades ago. They are insane, Cassius said to his bridge crew. What do they hope to accomplish? Prill recorded everything. She had the same question on the surface of Verdana 4. The Mirati watched the skies with confusion and growing emotion. They had never asked for help. They had accepted their fate with the peaceful resignation their species was known for. A young Mirati named Tinder approached Ambassador Dura Okonkwo in the garden of the Healing Temple. She was barely adult by Mirati standards, her forearms still thin and her eyes still wide with innocence. Why did they come? Tinder asked. We cannot repay them. We have nothing to offer. We are not strategic. We are not valuable. Dara reached into her coat and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed a Mirati healer carrying a small human girl through smoking ruins. The girl's eyes were closed. Her body was limp, but the healer held her as gently as if she were made of glass. That is me, Dara said. Grandmother Suli carried me 2 miles to a medical ship. My legs were broken. I was dying of infection. Every other species had passed us by because helping humans was too dangerous. Tinder studied the image. And she saved you. She saved thousands of us. She never asked our names. She never asked what we could give her in return. She saw children suffering and decided to help. Dara's voice grew thick with emotion. Humans do not forget that kind of kindness. We cannot forget. It becomes part of us. In orbit, the Drenithi fleet moved into attack position. Cassius had grown tired of the human defiance. He ordered a warning shot across the bow of the lead human vessel. The shot struck true. A cargo ship took damage, venting atmosphere. The humans did not move. Cassius frowned. Every species had survival instincts. Every species knew when to run from certain death. He had seen it 100 times. Human fleet, you have received your warning. Withdraw now. Captain Tanaka responded. We heard you. We are staying. Beside her, an old man named Pavel Volkov sat at the weapons console of his barely functional transport ship. He was 70 years old. His hands shook slightly. His eyes were not what they used to be, but his memory was perfect. He remembered his daughter dying in a refugee camp. He remembered a Mirati healer staying with her through the final hours, singing softly, holding her hand, making sure she did not die alone. He had nothing left to live for. but he had plenty to die for. Let them come, Pavel said quietly. I have waited 30 years to repay that debt. Across the human fleet, similar conversations happened. Veterans remembered Mirati medics. Parents remembered Mirati food shipments. Children remembered stories passed down through generations about the gentle aliens who had helped when no one else would. Observer Prill sent her first report to the Galactic Assembly. The human response defies tactical logic. They have assembled approximately 120 vessels against a Drenithi force of 300. Their ships are outdated and poorly armed. Many are civilian vessels with improvised weapons. Yet they show no signs of retreat. They appear to be prepared to die for a species that offers them no strategic advantage. I do not understand their motivation. I will continue to observe. The Assembly received her report with confusion. Several species quietly suggested that humans were being irrational. The Mirati had no military value. This was sentiment overwhelming logic. But on Verdana 4, Tinder watched the human ships in orbit and felt something she had never felt before. Something her peaceful species had no word for. Hope. These strange, violent, beautiful creatures had come to die for her people. Not for gain. Not for power. Simply because her grandmother's generation had once shown them kindness. She looked at Dara. Will they fight? Truly fight? Dara watched the ships above and thought about her grandmother Suli, now old and frail, waiting in the healing temple. Yes, she said. They will fight. They will die. They will make the Drenithi pay for every inch of ground in blood. Because that is what humans do for those they love. Love? Tinder asked. They do not know us. Dara smiled sadly. They know that your people save their children. That is enough. That is everything. Above them, the Drenithi fleet advanced, and the humans held their ground. The first human ship died at 0342 hours, Galactic Standard Time. A converted passenger liner called Remember Suli took 3 direct hits and broke apart in silence. 47 humans gone in seconds. The second ship died 30 seconds later. Then the third. Then the fourth. Overlord Cassius watched the destruction with satisfaction. This would be over quickly. These foolish humans would learn what happened when inferior species challenged the Drenithi Imperium. Then something strange happened. The humans did not retreat at a cargo ship. Its engines destroyed, used its last power to turn toward a Drenithi cruiser. The pilot, a woman named Adiza Okonkwo, spoke one final transmission to her twin brother Chitty in another fighter. Tell grandmother I paid our family's debt. Then she rammed her dying ship into the cruiser's bridge at full speed. Both vessels exploded together. Cassius stared at the tactical display. He had fought 23 species. He had learned their patterns, their breaking points, their survival thresholds. Every species had a moment where their instinct to live overcame their will to fight. The humans were losing badly. They were outnumbered. Their ships were burning. By every measurement, they should be running. Instead, they were getting closer. On the surface, Sergeant Major Rosa Gutierrez coordinated the ground defense with cold efficiency. She had been a refugee child once, fed by Mirati hands when her own species had abandoned her family. Now she commanded 3,000 volunteers, most of them older than her, none of them professional soldiers. They will land troops in the Eastern Valley, she told her forces. We have mined every approach. We have rigged every bridge. Every inch of ground they take will cost them 10 soldiers. A young volunteer asked the question everyone was thinking. Can we win? Rosa checked her weapon. No, but we can make them pay. And we can give the Mirati time to evacuate their children. That is enough. That is what we came for. In the healing temple, Grandmother Suli, now ancient, her 4 arms trembling with age, prepared medical stations for the wounded. She could barely walk, but she refused to hide. They came for us, she told the younger Mirati healers. We will care for them. We will ease their pain. This is all we know how to do, and we will do it until the end. The first human casualties from the space battle were transported down. Burned pilots, wounded gunners, dying crew members who had stayed at their posts until their ships fell apart around them. Grandmother Suli moved among them, her old hands still gentle, her voice still soft. She did not know their names. She did not need to. She simply saw creatures suffering and decided to help, just as she had done 30 years ago in orbit. Observer Prill watched the battle with growing horror. She had seen wars. She had seen massacres. She had never seen anything like this. A human fighter, out of missiles, flew directly into a Drenithy weapons array. The pilot, an old man named Pavel Volkov, was singing as he died. His last transmission was a lullaby his daughter had loved. Another ship, its crew wounded and its weapons offline, positioned itself between a Drenithy destroyer and a fleeing Mirati transport. It took the shots meant for the civilians. It died so others could live. Prill sent another report to the assembly. I have witnessed 4 hours of combat. Human losses are catastrophic. They have lost 31 vessels. Approximately 800 humans are dead. The Drenithy have lost 2 vessels and suffered minor damage to 3 others. By any rational analysis, the humans should withdraw. They are not withdrawing. They continue to fight with increasing ferocity. I am beginning to believe they have no survival threshold. I am beginning to believe they intend to die here. Subcommander Veth, a younger Drenithy officer, approached Overlord Cassius with concern. Sir, our intelligence on human psychology appears to be incorrect. Cassius did not look away from the battle. Explain. They are not behaving like a rational species. They are taking losses that should trigger retreat instincts. Instead, they are becoming more aggressive. Several ships have deliberately sacrificed themselves to damage our vessels. This is not normal behavior. Cassius watched another human ship ram itself into a Drenithy frigate. Both exploded. It is desperation, he said. They will break eventually. All species break. But doubt had entered his voice. On the ground, the Drenithy landed their first assault force in the Eastern Valley. 5,000 professional soldiers against Rose's 3,000 volunteers. The Drenithy advanced with confidence. These were farmers and merchants and elderly veterans. This would be simple. The first explosion killed 60 Drenithy soldiers. The second killed 40 more. Every step forward triggered another trap. Every building hid another ambush. Rose's volunteers did not fight like soldiers. They fought like people with nothing to lose and everything to protect. They fought like humans. By nightfall, the Drenithy had taken the valley. They had lost 400 soldiers doing it. Rosa pulled her survivors back to the next defensive line. They had bought the Mirati 6 more hours to eye in the healing temple. Grandmother Suli held the hand of a dying human pilot. His name was Chidia Okonkwo. His twin sister had died in orbit. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for saving us. All those years ago. Thank you. Suli sang to him softly as he faded. The same song she had sung to dying human children 30 years ago. She did not know why these creatures had come to die for her people. She did not understand their fierce, terrible loyalty. But she knew it was beautiful, and she knew it was not finished yet. Above them, the battle continued. The humans kept fighting, and the galaxy watched in silence. 1 week into the battle, President Amara Diallo stood before the Galactic Assembly. Behind her, the casualty numbers grew by the hour. 1,200 humans dead, 42 ships destroyed, a number that would have broken most species. You ask why we fight for the Mirati, she said. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were not. You call us irrational. You say we waste resources on a species with no strategic value. She paused and looked at the assembled representatives. 200 species watching. 200 species who had voted to let the Mirati die. 30 years ago, humanity was broken. Our colonies were burning. Our people were starving. We sent out distress calls to every species in this assembly. Do you know how many answered? Silence. 1. The Mirati. They came when no one else would. They fed our children when we had nothing. They healed our wounded when your medical ships passed us by. Her voice hardened. They gave us everything and asked for nothing. And you wonder why we fight. She leaned forward. We fight because kindness is not weakness. We fight because mercy is not foolishness. We fight because when someone saves your life, when someone feeds your children, when someone treats your wounded with gentle hands, you owe them something that cannot be measured in credits or territory. You owe them your loyalty, and humans pay their debts. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the assembly murmured in confusion. This was not how diplomacy worked. This was not how rational species behaved. But across the galaxy, something was stirring. The Hollow Ones were a small species that humans had saved from a plague 60 years ago. Human doctors had worked for 3 years to find a cure. Human supplies had kept them alive. Officially, the Hollow Ones declared neutrality in the Verdana conflict. Unofficially, Their cargo ships kept accidentally drifting into Drenithy supply lines. Fuel shipments were delayed. Ammunition transports got lost. Nothing that could be proven. Everything that could hurt. The Renari were refugees from a supernova. Human colony ships had evacuated 2 million of them when their sun died. Human worlds had given them land to rebuild. Officially, the Renari expressed concern about the conflict. Unofficially, they began shipping weapons and medical supplies to human forces. Pilots volunteered for civilian transport runs that happened to end at Verdana 4. Merchant Prince Galloway, a human trader who had spent 40 years building relationships across 100 systems, called in every favor he had ever earned. Credits appeared in human military accounts from anonymous sources. Ships were repaired at alien stations for free. Intelligence on Drenithy fleet movements leaked from species that officially knew nothing. Overlord Cassius received the reports with growing frustration. His supply lines were failing. His intelligence was compromised. Species that had declared neutrality were quietly working against him. "This is not how wars are fought," he told Subcommander Veth. "This is not how the galaxy works." Veth studied the tactical display. The humans had lost half their original fleet, but new ships kept arriving. Not military vessels. More converted cargo ships. More civilian yachts. More elderly pilots and ancient fighters. "Sir, I believe we misunderstood something fundamental about humanity." "What?" "They do not fight alone. They have never fought alone. Every species they have ever helped is now helping them. Not openly, but enough." Cassius slammed his fist against the console. "They are manipulating the galaxy." "No, sir. They are calling in debts. And it appears they have many debts to call." On the surface of Verdana 4, the Mirati were changing. Tinder stood before Rosa Gurez with determination in her eyes. "Teach me to fight." Rosa looked at the young Mirati. "Your people are healers. Pacifists. Fighting is not in your nature. Our friends are dying for us. Humans are burning in orbit so that Mirati children can live. I cannot only watch. I will not only watch." Her forehands clenched into fists. "Teach me." Rosa studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. She began teaching Tinder how to load weapons, how to drag wounded to safety, how to act as a combat medic under fire. The young Mirati could not bring herself to kill, but she could save lives. She could carry ammunition. She could be useful. Other Mirati followed. They would not abandon their peaceful nature, but they would no longer be passive victims. They would support those who fought for them. In the healing temple, Grandmother Suli listened to reports of the changing tide. More ships coming. More species helping. More hope than anyone had expected, but she was tired. So very tired. Dara sat with her, holding her frail hand. "You started all of this," Dara said softly. 30 years ago, when you carried a dying child through fire. You could not have known what you were creating." Suli smiled weakly. "I knew only that a child was suffering. That was enough. That was always enough." She closed her eyes. "I carried one child," she whispered. "You have carried a world." She did not open her eyes again. Dara held her hand as she passed. The ancient healer who had started an avalanche of loyalty with one simple act of kindness. Outside, the battle continued. Humans kept dying, but they kept fighting. And across the galaxy, species who had received human kindness began to remember their own debts. The tide was turning, not through force, through memory. 3 weeks into the battle, Admiral Ravi Anand arrived with the official human fleet. Overlord Cassius had expected this. He had prepared for this. 100 human military vessels against his remaining 260 Drenithy warships. The numbers still favored him. Then more ships appeared behind the human fleet. Cassius watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. Hollow 1 destroyers. Renari cruisers. Ships from the Venachi Collective. Ships from the Outer Rim Alliance. Ships from a dozen species that had no official involvement in this conflict that a single transmission broadcast across all frequencies. This is the Crimson Banner Coalition. We remember what humanity did for us. Their enemies are now our enemies. We stand with them. Subcommander Veth counted the new arrivals. "Sir, we are now outnumbered." Cassius could not respond. This was impossible. These species had nothing to gain from this fight. The Mirati were worthless. The humans were not powerful enough to reward allies. There was no logical reason for this coalition to exist, but it existed anyway. Admiral Anand opened communications. "Overlord Cassius, You came here to kill a peaceful species. You thought no one would stop you. You were wrong. Cassius found his voice. This changes nothing. The Drenithi Imperium does not retreat. Then the Drenithi Imperium will learn what happens when you threaten those who showed humanity kindness. Anand's voice was cold. You wanted a war. You have one. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Crimson Banner fleet attacked with coordinated fury. Human ships drove into Drenithi formations without regard for their own survival. Hollow One vessels targeted critical systems with surgical precision. Renari cruisers covered evacuation routes for damaged Allied ships. But the Drenithi were professional warriors. They reformed their lines. They counterattacked. They made the coalition pay for every victory. On the ground, the Drenithi launched their final assault. 20,000 soldiers against Rosa's remaining defenders. This would end the resistance. This would secure the planet. Rosa had 800 humans left, and 300 Mirati volunteers. They held the line at the Healing Temple, the last sanctuary, the place where Grandmother Suli had spent her life saving others. Tinder carried wounded to the medical stations without stopping. Her arms ached. Her hearts pounded with fear. But she did not run. A human soldier fell beside her, wounded badly. Without thinking, she grabbed him and dragged him to safety. He was heavy. She was exhausted. But she did not let go. Why? He gasped as she worked to stop his bleeding. Why are you risking yourself? Because you came for us, she said simply. Because you remembered. Now we remember too. The Drenithi broke through the outer defenses. They pushed toward the temple. Victory was moments away. Then Veth stopped his unit. He looked at the humans still fighting, still dying, still refusing to surrender. He looked at the Mirati healers treating wounded soldiers of both sides without discrimination. He looked at the bodies of thousands who had given everything for people they had never met. This is wrong, he said, as officers stared at him. We came to take a planet from farmers and healers. We are killing people who only wanted to protect their friends. He lowered his weapon. I will not do this anymore. Other Drenithi hesitated. Some followed his example. Some did not. The assault faltered into confusion. In orbit, Cassius received the unthinkable news. His ground forces were fragmenting. His fleet was taking heavy losses. And a message had arrived from the Drenithi Emperor. Overlord Cassius, you promised a quick victory. You have delivered a political catastrophe. Half the assembly is now threatening economic sanctions against the Imperium. Our reputation is destroyed. Our allies question us. Withdraw immediately. This invasion is cancelled. Cassius stared at the message. He had superior technology. He had professional soldiers. He had every advantage that mattered in war. And he had lost, not to superior force, not to better strategy. He had lost because a species he had dismissed as sentimental and irrational had chosen to die rather than abandon their friends. He had lost because kindness, apparently, created loyalties that could not be broken. He ordered the retreat. As the Drenithi fleet pulled back, Admiral Anand broadcast one final message. Remember this day, Cassius. Remember what you learned here. Humanity does not forget those who help us. We will cross galaxies to repay a kindness. We will burn star systems to protect our friends. And if you ever threaten the Mirati again, if you ever threaten anyone we love, we will come for you. Not with fleets, not with armies. With every debt we have ever earned, every favor we have ever given, every ally we have ever made. Your empire is large, Overlord, but our memory is longer. The channel closed. Cassius watched Verdanafor shrink in his view screen. He had gone to conquer a worthless planet. He had discovered that humans measured worth very differently. And he had learned that their gratitude and their revenge were equally absolute. The war was over, but the lesson would echo across the galaxy for generations. 1 month after the Drenithi withdrawal, the memorial ceremony filled the gardens of the Healing Temple with silence. 2,147 human ships had been destroyed. 8,412 humans had died. Not soldiers fighting for territory. Not warriors seeking glory. Just people. Just humans who remembered a kindness and refused to let it go unpaid. Dara Okonkwo stood before a wall inscribed with names. So many names. Teachers who had become pilots. Merchants who had become soldiers. Grandparents who had flown ancient ships into battle because their grandchildren had been saved by Mirati hands decades ago. Her grandchildren, the Okonkwo twins, had separate entries. Adiz and Chitty. They had argued about who would fly the more dangerous mission. They had both been right. Tinder stood beside her, the young Mirati who had learned to carry ammunition and drag wounded to safety. She was no longer the innocent girl who had asked why humans would die for strangers. We survived, Tinder said quietly. Every Mirati on this planet. Because of them. Dara nodded. That was always the only goal. Everything else was acceptable loss. How can loss be acceptable? Dara touched the wall gently, her fingers tracing her grandchildren's names. Because some debts can only be paid in blood. Because some things are worth dying for. Because when someone shows you kindness in your darkest hour, you carry that with you forever. She looked at Tinder. Your grandmother carried me through fire when I was a child. These people carried your entire world. The currency is different. The principle is the same. In the Galactic Assembly, Observer Prill delivered her final report. Her voice was not steady. I came to document a minor conflict. Instead, I witnessed something that challenges everything we understand about rational behavior. Humans do not calculate the value of lives saved against lives lost. They do not measure kindness in terms of strategic benefit. They simply believe that when someone helps them, that help must be repaid, regardless of cost. She paused, gathering herself. I watched humans fly damaged ships into enemy formations because retreat would mean abandoning friends. I watched elderly pilots sing lullabies as they died. I watched a species sacrifice thousands of its own people for another species that offered no material benefit. And I was saved by a human soldier who pushed me out of danger and took the shots meant for me. His name was Corporal Ben Adeyemi. He had never met a member of my species before. He died for me anyway. The assembly was silent. I recommend we reconsider our understanding of humanity. They are not weak because they are sentimental. They are not foolish because they value loyalty over profit. They are perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because of these traits. Their gratitude has no limit. Their memory has no end. And their revenge, I suspect, would be equally absolute. She looked at the assembled representatives. The Drenathi learned this lesson at great cost. I suggest the rest of you learn it without needing the same teacher. Across the galaxy, the effects of Verdana spread like ripples in water. The Drenathi Imperium faced internal crisis. Vassal species that had watched the battle began asking uncomfortable questions. Would anyone fight like that for us? Would anyone die to protect our children? Or are we just resources to be used and discarded? 3 species formally requested independence from the Imperium within 6 months. 2 more began quiet negotiations. The invasion meant to show Drenathi's strength had revealed a different truth. Power built on fear could be broken. Loyalty built on kindness could not. The Crimson Banner Coalition became permanent. Not a military alliance. Something stranger. A network of species bound together by debts of kindness that stretched back generations. Humans at the center, not because they were strongest, but because they remembered longest. Other species began seeking human friendship. Not for trade advantages. Not for military protection. For the simple knowledge that if they ever needed help, if they ever faced extinction, humanity would remember that on Verdana 4. The Mirati planted a garden around the memorial wall. Flowers from 100 worlds grew there, sent by species who wanted to honor the fallen. The healing temple became a pilgrimage site. Humans came to pay respects to their dead. Other species came to understand what had happened here. Admiral Anand stood before the memorial as the sun set. His fleet had already departed. His duty was technically complete, but he had one more thing to do. He spoke to the names on the wall, to the dead who could not hear him, to the memory of what they had accomplished. They say humans are irrational. They say we waste resources on species that cannot help us. They say sentiment makes us weak. He smiled slightly. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps we are foolish to remember every kindness, to repay every debt, to fight wars we cannot win for people we barely know. He straightened. But I would rather be a species that remembers its debts than one that forgets its friends. I would rather die protecting those who showed us mercy than live knowing we abandoned them. I would rather be irrational and loyal than logical and faithless. He saluted the wall. To the fallen, you paid what we owed. Rest now. We will remember you. We will always remember. He turned and walked away. Behind him, the names of the dead glowed softly in the fading light. 8,412 humans who had died for kindness received. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity that day. They never forgot a favor, and their revenge, if anyone was foolish enough to threaten their friends again, would shake entire star systems. The Mirati had planted gardens. The humans had planted something else, a warning and a promise.